This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com for my weekly review of the information I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. Just want to remind people that are members of my channel, there will be a live members only interview tomorrow at 5 with Black Bart, former WWE World Class Championship Wrestling and WCW competitor, and it's only $1.99 a month to become a member. And hopefully we can eventually get enough to get bigger and bigger interviews and more interviews. But right now we're hovering around the 50 mark. So if you like this channel, become a member. Our live interviews on there are also ad-free if you are a member. To start the news off, Meltzer reported on some bad news for international wrestlers and fighters related to President Biden announcing yesterday that there's now going to be a quarantine for people coming into the U.S. from other countries. Starting Tuesday, they've already made a rule that you're going to need to provide a coronavirus test before entering a plane to go to the U.S. But apparently now they're adding on a rule that you're going to have to quarantine for an undecided amount of time once you're in the U.S. So this is going to affect wrestlers from Mexico and Canada coming into the U.S. as well as other places. They're supposed to say within the next 2 weeks when this quarantine is actually supposed to start. There's no start date announced for it yet, but it will certainly affect a lot of combat sports talent because once this comes into effect, you're going to have to go, who knows? They haven't said whether it's going to be a 7-day, 10-day, or 14-day quarantine yet. But you'd have to go in theory and stay at a hotel for as long as 2 weeks before you could do whatever you're going to do. So that would bring your expenses up quite a bit to be able to either book a wrestler from another country, or if you're coming there to compete on your own dime, you now have to pay for up to 2 weeks worth of hotel rooms on top of the expense of the trip. So bad news. I mean, we already have the quarantine rule for Canada. I had to undergo a quarantine when I came back from Texas in December here for 2 weeks. But this will definitely affect my coverage of SWE Fury as far as attending their events going forward. It shouldn't affect their February 6th event in Dallas. I will be able to cover that. But depending on whether this quarantine goes into effect in late February or early March, it might affect my ability to cover their February 27th event. And by the way, speaking of SWE Fury, they announced they're going to be on 2 new local ABC affiliates today in Texas, and they're already on over 30 million TV stations, as well as starting this week. We already aired this week's new show. Every Tuesday night at 8 p.m., there will be a new recent episode of SWE Fury on the Hannibal TV. And then at 9 p.m., I'm going to be doing an Inside SWE Fury podcast with SWE matchmaker James Beard and various guests, where we will be taking live questions, giving away prizes, and discussing what's going on with SWE, which I think is the best up-and-coming federation in wrestling right now. And there's going to be a lot of big things coming for them in 2021. In WWE news, Wrestlemania was officially moved back 2 weeks, and it's going to be held over 2 nights on April 10th and 11th from Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. The Buccaneers have been having 15,000 fans a game for their home games as far as NFL in that stadium. I believe Super Bowl is also going to take place there this year. It's unknown how many people they're going to fit in there for Super Bowl, but the plan looks to be to get 30,000 people in there each night for WWE's Wrestlemania this year, which so far they haven't really even talked much about WrestleMania as far as what's going to happen, who's going to be there. I really disliked the John Cena versus Bray Wyatt debacle that they did at last year's WrestleMania. I only watched that and the Undertaker's cinematic matches. Those were the only two matches that interested me last year. The Bray Wyatt Cena one was just terrible in my opinion. People vanishing into thin air and all this kind of crap, that's just not what I want to watch in professional wrestling. NXT did a 0.15 rating this week. Total Bellas beat NXT. They did a 0.17. AEW did a 0.36. Raw did a 0.6. And SmackDown did a 0.67. A fan messaged me with an interesting point. AEW and NXT's viewership, they're considered like the smart mark companies, but their viewership has dropped more this year over the past year, more so than the Raw and SmackDown brands. So yeah, that's interesting that the smart shows have actually lost more viewers at a higher rate than the mainstream shows. For people that keep saying how great these smart mark NXT and AEW shows are. I can't watch either one of them. I think they're both horrible, and people that keep messaging me, you got to watch this that just happened in AEW. It's terrible. They keep using a kid in the finishes of matches. It's absolute bullshit. It's like, don't even send it to me. I don't care. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to pay attention to it. This Tuesday's episode of Impact that featured Kenny Omega, Tony Khan, Mark Henry, Private Party, and Jerry Lynn only did a 0.03 rating. That's right, 0.03. While Tony Khan himself appeared on Renee Paquette's podcast this week and compared Kenny Omega's recent heel turn to Steve Austin's heel turn of 2001. So Tony Khan is comparing the 0.03 ratings of Kenny Omega, comparing him to Steve Austin, that I believe the Raw record was like an 8 rating. Not a 0.08, an 8 when Austin was in his heyday. So I really don't think you can put those two in the same category. And even Dave Meltzer, as much of a fan as he is of AEW, he even pointed out, well, hopefully not for the comparison, because that was an angle that tanked WWE arena and merchandise business, turning Austin heel back then. Tony Khan also said that it was Kenny Omega's idea for this collaboration that Impact is doing with AEW. And the paid ads storyline was Tony Schiavone's idea. And Tony Khan likes it because it promotes AEW and keeps the quote-unquote storyline going. So he likes to compare himself to Eric Bischoff and compare this to like the NWO invasion of WCW, but nobody cares about that crap other than the smart marks. Nobody watches Impact. It's an embarrassment of a federation, just full of bad comedy. Taya Valkyrie is now a free agent. Good for her. She's done with that company. In other news, It was reported that both AAA and CMLL revenues have been down by as much as 70% with all this COVID stuff going on. There's talk that Japan won't be able to host the Olympics this summer, and the Japanese Olympics might be switched to 2032. I don't see how they could host the Olympics. I don't see how the Olympics could even happen, because although Texas and Florida are pretty open, it seems like the government of the U.S. is going to be cracking down on restrictions, making greater restrictions now. In Canada, we're on full lockdown here in the majority of provinces. Our gyms are closed. Most people can't even work, and they're just told to stay home. Stay home. How are you going to pay your rent? I don't know. What are the people supposed to do, the landlords, when these people can't pay their rent and have to collect, and everyone just keeps being told to stay home? I don't know. It's absolute craziness. I mean, they've had experts on Joe Rogan's that say these lockdowns don't work, and I don't see it working here in Canada because our numbers are nothing compared to the US numbers, but they've actually gone up since the lockdowns. There's been no real proof or evidence that closing the gyms actually has any effect on the spread of COVID or not. I finally went out and had to buy over $3,000 worth of gym equipment for my house that I did not want to spend money on. But at least I can get decent workouts here, because it doesn't look like things are going to open up anytime soon, sadly. But yeah, what I was talking about for the Olympics, there's so many countries with heavy restrictions. A lot of athletes can't even train right now. So, and with all the border restrictions and stuff, I don't see how they could do the Summer Olympics, which would just be, in theory, months away. Regarding Dark Side of the Ring, it's been confirmed now they're going to do a show on XPW, which I have a lot of content about on my channel. The WCW New Japan shows of North Korea in 1995. Sonny Ono talked about that to me for over half an hour in his shooter interview with me. He's going to be involved in that episode too, I'm sure. They're also doing one on FMW and Johnny K9, aka Bruiser Bedlam, who was allegedly a biker. They're also doing one on Chris Kanyon, which I'm surprised at, because he was really not that well of a known wrestler. I don't know. I don't know why they're doing one on Chris Kanyon. I met him once. He's a very nice guy, but I'm not sure if that one's going to be a big rating grabber. Dustin Diamond, known as Screech, he's 44 now. Everyone remembers him from Saved by the Bell, that are around my age. I used to love that show. I've been trying to actually interview Screech for years now, and maybe this sadly explains why he hasn't got back to me, perhaps. I guess he has stage 4 cancer right now. He's undergoing chemotherapy. He has been a wrestler. He did an angle with Lawler in Memphis. He appeared in TNA in the early days of TNA. He was on Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling. He's done indie dates. I believe he did something with the Blue Meanie at one point. But sorry to hear that about Screech. Here's something that I don't agree with Dave on. He reports that Joey Ryan won a default judgment against a wrestler known as Alley Cat in one of his multiple defamation lawsuits. He won that judgment on January 20th. And this is the part that I don't agree with Dave on. He says, quote, "It really doesn't mean anything because it's likely she has no money to pay and made no defense. So there was no case judged," end quote. Well, actually, it doesn't mean anything as far as like there was no case judged, but she lost because she didn't defend herself, which means she is now in debt to Joey Ryan for however much he sued her for. So she's going to have to declare bankruptcy if she can't pay it, or she's going to have to make payments. And this could actually greatly affect her life. So unfortunately, and I know this from being involved in various lawsuits in my life, you have to defend even frivolous allegations against you, or if you don't defend it, you lose by default, which is still a loss. So this girl is now screwed. Is he going to collect? Well, I sued Abdullah the Butcher for passing me Hep C about 11 years ago now, and I won in both Canada and the US. And I haven't got a penny from him. So is he actually going to collect on any of these lawsuits to merit the money he paid a lawyer to defend him? Very likely not, but you can't say it really doesn't mean anything because this alley cat did not mount any sort of defense, even get free legal aid to defend herself at no cost. She's now screwed. Meltzer also mentions that other defendants in similar cases have gotten lawyers, and those cases will probably take a long time to come to fruition. Pele Primo had to take out a gigantic loan to pay for his defense. Now, you can also self-defend, by the way. And particularly if someone has a frivolous lawsuit against you, the judge will actually understand that you're self-defending and take that into account when making a decision. So I feel bad for this alley cat who either literally just didn't care or had poor advisors, but you should never just simply ignore a lawsuit and think because you don't defend it that it's just going to go away. You have to defend even the most ridiculous claims. And it's just a sad situation all around. But I'm not a fan of Joey Ryan. I have never met him personally. I thought he brought wrestling to new levels of low with all the dick grabbing and dick kissing garbage that he's done in matches. Wrestling is not porn. That turns, having Colt Cabana kiss your dick in a match, that might get 1 million hits on YouTube. But the average person is not going to see that and want to become a wrestling fan. They're going to see that and say, my God, wrestling is stupid. Possibly share it with some friends to show how stupid wrestling has become. But I don't agree with that. And I don't think any wrestler should have to be asked to have their dick grabbed in a match ever. I don't think that should be part of a wrestler's description. If a promoter says, this is going to be part of the match, you're going to grab his dick or he's going to grab your breasts, or there's going to be genital grabbing if it's a female. I don't think that's part of a wrestler's description. I don't remember Bruce Hart teaching me that one in the dungeon. Really don't remember that at all. Dave, who didn't mention SWE last week, maybe he heard my complaints. He mentions this week that SWE is running Carthage, Texas for the East Texas WrestleFest, the Carthage Civic Center, February 27th. Names advertised for the show include Terry Funk, Davey Boy Smith, Tim Storm, Christy James, Mark Henry, Teddy Long, Shaul Guerrero, Rodney Mack, Melina, Boogeyman, Mil Mortes, Jazz, and Lacey Von Erich. And Jazz is going to be on the Inside SWE podcast with me and James Beard, by the way, this Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, live on the Hannibal TV. In UFC news, this might be their biggest pay-per-view weekend of the year. I watched actually all the UFC embedded episodes earlier today regarding the big Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier fight that's happening tomorrow night in Abu Dhabi. And it just reminds me that the build-up in MMA is so much better than wrestling. And the characters in MMA these days, overall, with some exceptions, are just so much better than wrestling. And I hope McGregor wins that one. Ariel Helwani is reporting that the March 27th UFC pay-per-view will be a double title show with Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou for the heavyweight title, and Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega for the featherweight title. And Meltzer believes that the winner of Miocic versus Ngannou will almost certainly fight John Jones this summer in his heavyweight debut. It has been reported that Jones and White have somewhat made up in their contract dispute. UFC's first show was January 16th, and it actually aired on ABC from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and did a 0.36 rating. So that's actually the same rating that AEW did, and a lower rating than Raw and SmackDown. So that goes to show you that even though UFC by far is more popular for the big money pay-per-view buys, their TV shows still overall don't do as well as the wrestling TV shows. And Paul Polar Bear Varlins, who was a 9-9 MMA fighter, one of the early UFC stars, passed away January 16th. He appeared on most of the UFC shows on 95 and 96 and had a three-week ECW run. And Meltzer goes into the story here. I've actually interviewed Missy Hyatt about his, if you search up Missy Hyatt, Paul Varlins on the Hannibal TV, she'll tell you her version. But Meltzer brings up that Paul Heyman had the idea of getting a legit UFC fighter to put over Taz, to help make people believe that Taz was actually tough. They wanted Dan Severn to do it, but he was NWA champion at that time, so he wouldn't have been able to lose to Taz. Apparently Paul Varlins didn't want to lose clean to Taz, even though Heyman, I guess, had lied to him, promising him a push after if he'd done it. But he still put up a fight and wasn't comfortable losing to Taz, according to Missy Hyatt, because Taz was so small. Eventually, Varlins agreed because Heyman had apparently promised that Missy Hyatt would give him a blowjob if he would lose. And Meltzer points out here that promise was from Heyman, not from Missy Hyatt. And because nobody trusted anyone at that point, Heyman had a lot of ECW, quote-unquote, tough guys around the ring during that match in case, I guess, Varlins didn't want to go along with the plan. And he did go along with the plan, and apparently Hyatt, according to Meltzer, told Varlins that she didn't give blowjobs to jobbers after, and everyone was upset about how the match went. Varlins thought he'd been double-crossed, and he claimed working for ECW was like being involved in a con. He also said Heyman promised him that none of the footage of the match would ever air on television. It would be exclusively for home video. But the finish of Taz choking out Varlins did air on television. So that's my Wrestling Observer update. And I'll get into the fan question portion of this. Geraldo asks, how do you become a member of the Hannibal TV? You go to the main page and you click on join, or go in the description of any of these videos, and at the bottom of the description there's a direct link to becoming a channel member. Mike D, one of the channel members, would love a Typhoon or Harris Brothers interview. The Harris brothers are pretty elusive. Maybe Typhoon one day. Lori P enjoyed my Ted Arcidi interview that was live for members, and all my member interviews I will eventually put out for everyone. I just try and give something back to the people that are helping me pay for the interviews. Solav would rather not know his own politicians in Canada, let alone care about the U.S. Well, because there's literally nothing for me to do in Canada, like zero. There's no one for me to interview. The job I used to have here has been closed since the beginning of lockdown. Gyms are closed. And all my people I interview are in the U.S. That's why I care about the U.S. and I hope to live there one day. But unfortunately, I can't just do that without a visa. And hopefully, if this keeps growing, I'll eventually be able to move to the U.S. as a YouTuber and get out of this cold. As Zantastic says, the thumbnail is crazy. Well, the picture of me with my beard of pure ice was when it was negative 16 Celsius for my run here the other night. It's just crazy. Ivan Santos would like to see Mil Mortes versus the Blood Hunter. Who knows? It could happen in SWE Fury. They both work there now. Porch Monkey says Scott Steiner sucked. Well, I like him. Harry Bullock says WWE is garbage now. Can't argue with that. Anthony thinks the whole industry is going to fail unless fans are involved in wrestling shows. Well, AEW has fans at their shows. NXT has fans at their shows. SWE has fans at their shows. The only promotions that don't have, or Raw and SmackDown don't have fans right now. They could if they wanted to, but they don't. Impact could if they wanted to tape in states that allowed it, but they want to do their. But keep in mind with Impact, they weren't really drawing at all. They were actually when they came to Ottawa in 2017 for their tapings, and people can search this up. They actually paid a casting company and offered $50 to aspiring actors who wanted to come and watch Impact. So maybe it's better for Impact to just have no fans because they couldn't draw fans anyways. City of Roses has not watched anything of North American wrestling come in over 6 years. He likes the Japanese wrestling. I can't get into the Japanese wrestling. It's a lot of gymnastics stuff. There is some hard-hitting stuff, but there's also a lot of goofy stuff. And then take into account I can't understand what most of them are saying, which makes it even more difficult to get into. So, yeah. I did like watching Bruiser Brody and The Sheik and Terry Funk and Dory Funk in Japan, though. Stan Hansen back in those days. Zantastic says he can't even watch the 10-minute highlight video of AEW anymore. I agree. I fully agree. Mitch Miller giving me a hell yeah. Porch Monkey, I don't know. That's what the rumor is. None but Christ says, what product is better than AEW? SWE Fury. And SWE Fury is only going to get more and more better as time goes on. Someone says, you got a long way to go, Mr. Khan. Dusan says, Khan is the biggest mark out there. He's a rich mark, and I can't blame him. Maybe if my dad was worth $14 billion or whatever his dad's worth, I would just have a wrestling company and book whatever the hell I wanted to, and my dad would just use it as a tax write-off. Or if I had a dorky little kid that had an interest and I wanted to give him a company to pursue that interest, use it as a tax write-off and keep him busy, maybe I would allow it. Lori says Stone Cold put a lot of asses in the seats. I agree. it will be hard. It would be hard for any of these companies to match the Attitude Era Superstars rating. I agree. Someone pointed out the Sunday Night Heat show I was on, where I wrestled Eugene, got a better rating than, like, a massively better rating than anything's getting now as far as wrestling. That's just how far wrestling is sunk. Garrett says you can't compare today's wrestling from the Golden Era or the Attitude Era. You can't. You can't. SWE Fury is trying to bring it back, but you can't compare what's on TV. I'm embarrassed of what's on TV. For the old episodes of SWE Fury, we're putting on classic ones as they send them to me on this channel. But as I said, it's getting better as time goes on. I believe the last of the episodes from their old producer aired this week. And I do believe next week is the first show from the new producer. And they really got a much better producer moving forward now. And also they upped their star power. So you're going to see more star power and overall better quality talent in SWE Fury as time goes on. But even if you watch the classic episodes, there's legends, there's some good up-and-coming stars. They have a fantastic women's division. Lots of good things going on. Oh my God, I won't read that one out loud. By the way, check out the match of Selena Delorento, who's appearing on the next AEW event as the Bloodhunters manager, February 6th. She did do a custom match for the Hannibal TV that I posted earlier this week against Dynamite DD, and it's got about 15,000 views on this channel. Pretty good. Nothing But Christ. Yes, there's also an SWE Fury channel, and we share a lot of content. They actually also, I also stream all my SWE interviews on their channel as well, and the TV shows are on both mine and their channels. Loki LL says the gyms are going out of business. They want everyone fat. The gyms are going out of business. Peter Carr says XW was garbage. I just hope my gym doesn't go out of business, because I really love my gym that I train at. But I don't see how they're going to be able to survive this. Big Beef says Florida's wide open. Why is the Canadian government shutting down everything? I want to get the hell out of here. That's all I can say. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I'm really, really depressed with this situation. Garrett, doesn't Abdullah the Butcher have money? There's actually another lawsuit going on with Abdullah right now, because in between my first victory in Canada and then when we got the judgment endorsed in the US, he fraudulently transferred properties, which is illegal. You can't transfer properties to people when you have a judgment against you. So there's a new lawsuit against the people he fraudulently transferred properties to. He still does own 2 houses. His wife hasn't lived with him for the past 10 years. He actually lives with another woman. I think her name is Jocelyn Marshall. And just total slime balls. Very complicated situation that he's just a scum of the earth. Anyone that knows they have Hep C, first of all, shouldn't be doing double blood matches. But second of all, they should not be cutting themselves with a razor blade knowing they have Hep C and then sticking that infected razor blade into other people. And by the way, Abdullah also hasn't paid his taxes in 10 years. So he's in a lot of shit right now. Total scumbag. Doosan thinks there's too many liberals in wrestling. Oh, I got a visitor. My dog's coming to say hello. Loki says Connor's whiskey is the shit. I haven't tried it yet. Pulsar Lights, is Bellator still around? It is, but it's not really that popular. It's not really that popular. Steve, I'll watch the match when someone posts it free on YouTube. You do say Mayweather versus McGregor was a joke, but didn't McGregor make $100 million? That's nothing to be a joke at. Travis tips me $2. Ever work with Vince Russo? I've done like four or five interviews with Vince Russo on this channel. If you search Vince Russo, the Hannibal TV. So I've worked with him as an interviewer, and he's been very reliable. He's been on time, easy to deal with. But have I worked with him in a wrestling company? No, I have not. Mopped Mike is glad he moved to Florida. Mitch Miller says Abdullah is a piece of shit. Mike D and Colonel Quayle and Allen all say hi to Piper, who's already left. Rolf says Vince Russo says, bro, so damn much it makes it hard to get through those interviews. He does say bro a lot, and I'm not a fan of, you'll never hear me say bro unless I'm quoting someone. I don't use that. I don't like that terminology. And yeah, it would be difficult to be around someone that talks like that constantly. That's one of the reasons I think that Matt Riddle, other than, I don't see what's so great about Matt Riddle, but the constant saying of bro doesn't endear me to him very much. David says, looking forward to a Selena Delorento interview. I have one. Let me just look it up for you. This will be the last thing that I do here. Hold on. I did an interview with her less than a year ago. I'm going to post the link for you. I did this interview on April the 5th. Hold on. By the way, be sure to give this video a like so it gets ranked. I appreciate it if you would click the like button. That would help me out a lot. And also, go to our Facebook, Great North Wrestling, the Hannibal TV page, and like that too, because we post, this is streaming on there now, ad-free, and we post a lot of ad-free interviews on that Great North Wrestling channel. So hope you enjoy that Selena interview. Thanks, Rolf, for, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name is Stormcloak. That's pretty cool. Thanks for liking the channel, Pulsar Lights. I'm going to go down to my basement soon and train. Thanks, Mr. Unknown. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews,